Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 579. I had the white pieces and kicked off with c4. This was kind of a short game, so I may just go over the opening in a little more detail than usual. It came to a sudden end, but before my opponent's blunder, that game was actually still pretty even, so kind of an interesting struggle in the early part of the game. My opponent goes knight f6, reasonable response here, very flexible. And I go with g3. These two moves here, either knight c3 or g3, let me put them on the board. Those are the main ways to stay in English territory. If you play d4, you're transposing to a queen's pawn opening, and knight f3 also indicates that you intend to go into a queen's pawn opening, although there are other possibilities there too. So knight f3 is a reasonable response, but I'm not trying to disguise anything. I'm just going directly for the English. So g3, he played g6 here. And now the main moves, I guess, are e5, going for a reverse Sicilian type of setup, or either e6 or c6. The idea with those moves is to prepare d5 and counter this c-pawn here, and be prepared after c takes d5 to take back with either a pawn or a piece. But g6 is an interesting way to play, and it could indicate either the intent to play a symmetrical system against the English, or as we see in this game, he wants to play something like a King's Indian. And so that, if he wants to play a symmetrical English, he can continue with c5. But if he has something else in mind, he could keep his options open by playing bishop g7, not committing just yet. But he goes directly for this Pirtz or King's Indian setup, this little pawn structure here. It's also the same kind of pawn structure you get in a Sicilian dragon, I guess. But, well, it'll be a King's Indian and a few more moves because he's going to play e5. But he starts with bishop g7 here. And I continue with e4. Now, I don't have to play e4 here. Since he's indicating he's going for a King's Indian, I could go back into a fianchetto setup against the King's Indian, which is something I have been playing lately. So d4 and then e4 would be one way to get there, or even starting with e4. You can see d4 is a top choice. Or I could continue developing with my knight, and that would stay in English territory as well. But what I have in mind is playing the Botvinnik setup. And let's see. Yeah, the chess engine likes d4. It generally prefers white in these King's Indian setups because white has a little more space, whereas e4 thinks it's more or less even. And the way for black to equalize here is kind of interesting. If the black plays the move c5. So kind of a natural move in this structure. It's enhancing the power of the bishop, and then maybe black can follow up with knight to c6 and try and get some control over the dark squares to play against my control over the light squares. So that's probably best play for black. But his idea is to play e5 and go for this King's Indian setup. And I think this is okay too. Let's see, I go knight ge2, just completing the Botvinnik setup here, castles, castles. And then he goes knight bd7, and I went d3 here. So d3 completes the Botvinnik setup, but I could have gone d4 at this point, and this is a reasonable setup, a reasonable way to play against the King's Indian setup that black has. But anyway, like I said, I was aiming for the Botvinnik setup, and I chose to play here. And that gets us out of the opening book. The position is still in the range of even. My opponent goes h6, I go h3. He goes a6, I go h3. I'm trying to control the g4 square so I can place a bishop here on e3 without it being hassled. He goes rook b8. And I thought he was just going to play b4 immediately, but he doesn't do that. And I developed the bishop here. He starts with this knight move. Knight to c5, which is probably a good move in general because it puts pressure on these white pawns. But in this case, it's not so well timed because I can just kick that knight away with b4. The chess engine is also pointing out that I have the f4 break here, which is typical of the Botvinnik system. You have kind of two ideas to advance your position. One is to grab space on the queen side, pushing here with b4. And that can also be a pawn break if there's a pawn on c5. But the other idea is the pawn break over here on the king side, pushing f4 and trying to open up some lines here. And it looks like they're both good right in this position. I chose to play b4, kicking the knight, and the knight went to e6, and then I went queen d2, lifting the queen up off the back rank. And I don't really want to trade this bishop at this point because this pawn is pretty fixed on the e4 square. This e5 square rather, this bishop is blocked in behind the pawn, so I'm not really motivated to trade off that bishop. So this queen lift was mainly done to connect the rooks, and I'm still trying to figure out where the queen goes and how the rest of the position will unfold. Anyway, my opponent plays b6. I guess he's preparing c5. I could push the f-pawn forward right here once again. Might be a good move, but I play this rook to c1 move, and now he goes bishop d7, which is I was kind of leading up to a mistake. If he wants to play c5, which this b6 move kind of indicates, I mean, it's sort of funny that he has the rook on the b file, and he didn't play the pawn all the way forward to b5. But I guess maybe because of my bishop here, he thought that might be a little bit weakening. Hard to say. But I could push on with, if he played b5, I could have pushed on with c5, I guess, in that case. Anyway, so now he's preparing the move c5, it seems like, when he plays b6. And he could just play that move right now. You know, if you're going to play that move, no time like the present. There's nothing bad that happens after that. I can trade a pair of pawns and open up the b file. That would help him. So I'd probably just maintain the tension there. Anyway, he played bishop d7. So it's not yet a mistake. I can once again kick out with f4, but I played knight d5. So not the most accurate way of playing. He can just sort of ignore this knight, but what I was noticing was that if he trades, I will get pressure on the c file, so that would be good. But he doesn't have to trade. That's the reason why this move is a bit questionable. Instead of trading, he can just play c5 once again and block my c-pawn from coming forward. So that's the way for black to stay equal. He took my knight, and I took back. And now I have this nice pressure on the c-file, so this is good. And let's see, he jumps in with knight d4. And the best continuation here, for me, is to just take that knight. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one. He takes back, and then bishop to f4. And I've got the bishop and the rook kind of coordinating in a way. He can't easily lift the c-pawn because of the pressure on the d-pawn. And this pawn is isolated at the moment, and it's in the long run may be hard for black to protect. So I have a couple of things to target in that position. Instead, here I played f4, and here it's just not as good. I mean, I was thinking he can't take because of the knight, but of course he can trade knights with tempo because that's with check, and then he can grab the pawn. I thought this was still okay for me. It's just that the other line was better. Now, let's see, I took back with a pawn. Yeah, the engine wants me to take with the rook or the bishop, keep the piece pressure on. But I was thinking I have some center influence with these pawns. So I guess I'm still okay with this position, but objectively it's about even. And this is where my opponent makes the game-losing blunder. So if you can figure out why c5 is such a terrible move, this can be your tactics quiz for this video. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. He did play c5. Let's see, the best move here would have been f5, just challenging my center immediately. Okay, but he played c5, and I took en passant, and he resigned. The problem is it's kind of a double threat. The pawn is already attacking the bishop, and after the bishop moves, the pawn is also coming forward to fork the queen and the rook. So there's no way to avoid loss of material, and he just resigned. Anyway, interesting parts to this game. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon.